Hi, welcome to another edition of HUGS. I'm Antika Libby, your host, and the Trauma Transformer. And my mission is to witness millions of Christians just surrender to God's love and mercy by eliminating the distractions of pain and heartache that reside in their bodies and their minds so they can really let God transform their lives from stuck in struggle to confident and peaceful. And I'm a missionary for God's work as an author, healer, and spiritual teacher at fithappychristians.com with online private and group programs, as well as each week here where I link arms with amazing people from around the world who are experts and missionaries and God's people that have witnessed God's hand at work in their own lives and are really weaving hope and faith and love in the world around them. And today, I'm going to continue to really illuminate God's healing and miraculous hands through testimonials of love and unity and great works with my guest, who is a really good friend of mine. I'm blessed to have her on the show. She's also a humanitarian at heart for God's work in the world, and she's a shining example of what Christian fellowship and love looks like when in action. She has volunteered her time to many of God's causes in her own neighborhood in Indiana, as well as in orphanages in Haiti. She has a gift for listening to God's calling and for leading people into deeper relationship with Him, and her compassionate, understanding heart really allows people to just relax and trust God more. And for me personally, she really helped my own walk with God become more personal and more biblical, which is such a gift. And I know that she does that for many people around her and her husband. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Emma Johnson to the show. Emma, welcome to HUGS.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I know just for years I've been listening to your relationship with God and how He works through you and how you surrender to His love and how you follow His calling. And I know that you have some amazing stories. So why don't you just start with sharing a little bit about yourself and your walk with God, and just how Christ is working in your life right now and anything that He brings to your heart.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to just say that I, even with that introduction, am just a person. I haven't set out to be anybody in particular besides whoever God wants me to be. And I guess over the years, just having that desire has brought opportunities for me to do things. So I guess just to start, I guess I would say that probably the place in my life where my walk with God changed the most in the ways in which my life looks now would probably be a time about 5 years ago when we were just leaving Alaska. And I really felt that I had got to a point in my relationship with God that I felt very confused, and I felt like I didn't have many of the answers that I thought I had. And I had a lot of struggles in my marriage and in my relationships, and the rules, quote unquote, that I thought I was following in order to bring about certain good things in my life were just not doing any good. They just didn't work. And I remember feeling like just really thinking, okay, God, I really just don't know. And I kind of said that over and over again for a while. I said a lot of I don't know and why for a while. And I threw out a lot of the things I assumed about God, but I didn't throw Him out. I just opened myself up to allow Him to define Himself to me. And that was the biggest thing I ever did. That was just this little place in my soul that just totally retired the old because it wasn't working, and I just allowed something new to take place. And God really, really, really has showed up over and over again. He's put me through seasons that I probably wouldn't want to go back to. He's shown me things I probably would never choose to see, but when there's something, I guess when you know that God's involved in that and you know that he's leading you through that and you know that he's showing you that and it's not accidental and there's a purpose in all of it, it has brought about a great fruit within me. And I guess that's where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. So I love that you said that you let God define himself. And I know for me that has been that's also been huge. I never really thought about it that way, but continuously allowing God to define himself and letting go of my own understanding as well as the understanding I think I should have. And, just turning back to the Bible and turning back to my conversation with God and asking him that. So, will you just talk a little bit about different ways that he's shown you him and how that's built your faith?
Okay. I do have a lot. I have a lot of examples I could select from, so I'm not sure which one I should choose right now. I guess in particular, in 1 year in particular was really an intense year for a lot of reasons. There was a lot of things going on in my personal life and in my marriage, and I really felt like I was working really hard to fix things in my marriage, and God was just it was either a really dry season and I felt like God was nowhere, and then all of a sudden he would really show up in these huge ways, and this whole year was kind of like a dry season, and I'm like waiting for God to show me something, and then he really did. So it was just it was rough because those dry seasons are really hard. But as I was working through things in my marriage, and that seemed to be just kind of the wall I was beating my head against for a long time, feeling like, God, we have to get this right. We have to get our marriage right. If we ever want to do anything for you, this has to happen first. And one day I really felt like he just told me that he loved me and cared about me more than my marriage. And I felt that was the first real dose of just absolute God's love that I really felt, because I think I had always thought there had to be something on my end before he would really look at me in favor. And the cause of my marriage felt like such a right cause and such a thing that God would want me to do. And I never thought for a second that was the wrong thing. And I'm not saying it was the wrong thing, but I'm just saying that in that, intense time where I was just relentlessly we were both trying to really fix our marriage, he just pulled me out of that, and it was like, just looked at me with his eyes into my eyes, and I really felt like he was just telling me this, I love you more than your marriage. And, I know this now, but you really do have to be a complete person before God before you really can have that marriage that comes together in the way that God designed it to. Yeah. And, I just wasn't realizing that. So I guess out of that season where I was really just seeing God, even though it was far and few between, he also was really just showing me things about the world. And I remember, it's kind of funny the things you do. So I would sometimes just start feeling like, okay, God, like, when are you going to bring us the next thing in our life? Like, when are we going to be able to get to the point where we have a more dependable car that we don't have to worry about breaking down, or that we have a house with more than a bathroom? And these are things that I just felt like God would do for us, as if, that was just already spoken. I mean, nobody said that. That was an assumption on my part. And I remember getting really antsy at those dry seasons where I wasn't really feeling or hearing God very much. And I would end up stalking houses in my neighborhood that I wanted to live in. So I'm not hearing anything. I would just drive around and round and just look at them and picture my life from the inside. And at the same time, I totally hear God telling me things like, you can't depend on anything material in this world. I mean, you know that you can only have peace by anything that I give you, right? But I'm like, right, but I still want to live in that house. And I'm just picturing everything about what my life could be in this house. And, I wasn't really hearing it, but then it just went on through that whole year. So another thing that happened was that we had that pretty big storm season that year, and there was a really huge tornado in Joplin, Missouri, and I had an opportunity to go down there and just pass out gift cards to people and just kind of drive and walk around and help do a little bit of cleanup. And, that was just incredible in just incredible ways. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. It was really sad, but as you just see an entire city just absolutely flattened, and people just crying over their homes and things that they just don't have anymore, it made me think, how can I put all of this, all of this that God has given me, and put it into something that's material and think that that's going to be solid, and it just kind of took all those desires, just a split second, they were just gone. It was just that moment where it was like, okay, I get it. I'm only going to depend on the things that you give me, because it was really like he was clear about, you can depend on your security comes from what I give you, not from the things that you can build with your own hands. So I really backed off at that point, and I still have a bathroom with one house, or a house with one bathroom, and it's fine with me. So
It's a cute house. It's a great house.
it is.
Wow, that's so awesome, because it's not that you can't enjoy the things or have the homes, the cars that work, the food on the table.
Right.
It's not the poverty, it's that attachment, or that need for the things to define you or define what's important. When you let that go, what I'm hearing is you just also just let, okay, only the things that you give me, the spiritual gifts, the heart touch, the experiences of helping other people, are going to matter to me. And what has transpired in your life since then, since that realization, or those two realizations, and how is it playing out?
Good question. Very good question. Okay, so that time for me was probably getting close to being about 2 years ago. And that season just really opened me up to saying a lot of I don't knows still. And in this way, I was saying kind of like, okay, now I don't know about my future. Now I don't know what you want me to do. And I realized that you could tell me to do anything. I mean, it was kind of like the future was wide open as far as what God might have in store. And as he was really putting these things within me, he also really, I mean, like sometimes how verses from the Bible just like jump up and land on your soul, and you are just like, that is mine. And it was the end of a long verse, and the end of it was, without me you can do nothing. And it was like, as God was putting all these things within me, he absolutely put this other thing alongside of it, which halted me from jumping ahead of God's plan, because it was, without me you can do nothing. So you have to wait on my timing to do anything in my name, is really, I think, what I felt from that. So even though my heart was wide open and I felt like I could do anything, I was like, we would move to a third world country, we would adopt 12 children, like we would do anything. I mean, just pick one and let me know what it is, and I'm sitting here waiting, So I just kind of have been in this place of openness for about, I would say, a year and a half, where I just feel open and ready for whatever God might have. So during that year and a half, I had an opportunity through my church to go to Haiti, and I've always wanted to travel and to go to a third world country. In college, I was almost kind of this close to saving up for like a one-way ticket out of the States and going I don't know where, but, I never did it. So for the opportunity to come at, last year, which was on my 31st birthday is when I went, it felt late for me for some reason, but it also felt perfectly timed by God, because it was such a gift from God that I got to go. I mean, it was such a gift. It was just like this birthday gift from God. I just felt that. So being there, though, it was just any experience that God gives us is, which I feel that half of it is just absolutely beautiful and the other half is just completely tragic. And that is just kind of the way that things are, I think.
It's that beautiful contrast. Yes.
It was that. So So we had an opportunity to do a medical missions trip there and to travel to villages that hadn't had any medical treatment in sometimes up to 10 years. And we just kind of brought like a little pharmacy with us, like what you would find at, a CVS or something like that, and just Tylenol and things that were over the counter, and did a little clinic, and I got to take blood pressures, and but just watching those people, and I just did a lot of people watching and people observing, and I was in awe of just who they were and the lives that they lived and the ways that they had these close relationships with each other. That was probably the part that really just opened my eye the most, was they might be hungry and they might not have anything, but they actually love each other. Usually family is pretty close. And then even the orphanage that we worked with, the kids were just absolutely each other's family. And I just witnessed this 74-year-old woman run an orphanage with about 30 kids, or maybe close to 30 kids. And she had some older helpers, of course, but it was so different than how we do things. I mean, it was so different. And I just observed all these kids, and they got along for the most part, and they were helpful. And every evening they sang songs and did devotions. And I was floored, in comparison to the kinds of things that we have for kids here, and churches is so different. So that was a really neat experience. And then, fast forward to the beginning of this month, I've my family, meaning my parents and my husband and I, have all taken on a cause, I guess you could say, or a situation that God has just brought on our laps, and that is just housing 4 kids that need a home for 3 months. So that's what we're in the middle of right now. And as I began to realize that these 4 kids were going to be around longer than a week, which is kind of how it started, I just kept thinking back of that orphanage in Haiti, and I just kept thinking, like, if those kids, the more the merrier, they did it, and this is kind of possible. I mean, it just kind of funny how the two came together for me a little bit, but
That's awesome.
anyway.
Oh my goodness. So, so the contrast in seeing and really people watching and being open and just allowing your heart to be open, and then allowing these things, like what you asked for when you started the conversation was, I want to, we'll move to a third world country, we'll, adopt 12 kids. And I know that you were joking, but you went to a third world country, and now you're taking care of kids. So
Right.
I mean, like totally God is doing this. And you were open, and God's opened that door, and for a year and a half time span, that's not too long. Just a little bit, talk to us about how there's so many different ways, and I really want to highlight through this segment, like the different ways God speaks to different people, and how you hear him or see him or know him, and therefore, through that we can find different ways, and I know that it's probably changed as you have matured in his faith, in your own, in not his faith, in your faith in him. But that's pressing on my heart to ask. So talk a little bit about that.
So how do I hear it? Okay. Well, I guess I'm always the type that thinks, that kind of looks at things like, okay, we went through this, and now I'm here, and now I know these things, and kind of, tries to put everything in a little bit of a package, and kind of puts it on the shelf, and is a little bit like, okay, God, thank you for teaching me those things. And then, a part of me will be like, and thinking, maybe that's about all you were going to teach me, so now I'll just go on with my life, and thanks for the lessons. And I find myself in that place where I feel like I've learned everything that you were going to teach me, and now I'm just kind of going off of those lessons. And as soon as I start thinking like that is when God usually really uses something out of left field to humble me and to show me that the lessons are never over, and that he will always be the one in charge, driving the boat, and I'm always the passenger, and I never really get to drive. But I guess I kind of go back on that thinking as though, I will be the one in charge one day, which is just not going to happen. So anyway, I think the times when I really am, I set that thinking aside, and I think it kind of ebbs and flows, where I really say, okay, I don't know. Again, you've taught me a lot, but I can't say what's going to happen from here. And then I just stay open to what God might do. Last year, I had a really interesting experience, and it was actually, I went back to finish school last year. So I was in, and I had to take a theology class because I had gone to a Christian college, and that was a requirement for me to graduate. So I did this theology class, and this is honestly a little bit of an odd thing to share because it is a little bit odd, but I really had a Holy Spirit experience in the classroom, like with my theology teacher and the students. And it was one of those things where it was interesting. He was speaking on the Holy Spirit, and I was writing notes, but I just all of a sudden felt like everything was very much alive. And I also felt like God was really wanting me to say something, and I absolutely obeyed because it was that strong of a just overwhelming presence. And I totally raised my hand and said something way out of left field, and he didn't really get it, but I totally was supposed to say it, and I still don't know why. And it was this very strange experience. Like, I've never had that happen before, but I do feel that God just will show up, and sometimes it might not be in church, and it might not be at a place where you expect him, and it might not be in a way that you expect him. That was nothing. I've never had that happen before or since. I mean, it was definitely a standalone time. And I'm not 100% sure what to make of it. It was just God, and I'm not sure what his purpose was, but he just showed up. And anyway, those experiences have kept me really open to just realizing that you never know. And I could never put God in a box and say, this is how you've worked in the past, and this is how you're going to work in the future. Because he's always kind of throwing me, and keeping me, I guess, on my toes for where he might show up.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was an interesting one, but I guess along the same lines, kind of going back to the situation that we have right now with the kids that we're taking care of for 3 months, that was just absolutely just God orchestrated event that this family and that the mother and that these 4 kids walked into our lives, because they absolutely just walked in one day. And I had met their mother once before, and we had a conversation, and on my end it was nothing special. It was nothing at all. It was just I just looked at her like a normal person, and I knew that their lives were rough, but we just talked about things as though we were normal people. And when she really didn't have anybody and was really facing difficult circumstances, she felt like God was telling her to call me, and she was telling him, no, I'm not going to call her. I don't even know her. But she obeyed, and I listened, and right now we just have a really beautiful relationship that's blossoming, and God is just very present right now in her life and in my life, and these kids that have come into our lives have been a blessing. And
So cool.
I think he was laying the foundation of that, and I had no idea. I mean, I was just talking to somebody, like a person, and we were just having a conversation, and he was doing more than that. So,
Yeah.
never know.
Which really brings me to a great wrap-up question. And one thing that I think, well, it's been on my mind a lot lately, because I'm finally, God is telling me to speak out to the people that he really wants me to speak to. And the people that are wanting to understand, have a relationship with God, and realizing that he can't be put in a box, that he's going to show up in any way possible. Like, literally, like you took the words out of my mouth. And that made me go, oh. And then also being able to have this compassionate heart where, on one side, it's not Christian enough not to have God follow all these rules, for people wanting to follow whatever rules, whatever denomination they pick. You know, there's so many different denominations and rules in the religion of Christianity. But also, living the Christian life where you're diehard Christian and open to God showing up however he shows up, and accepting people that might not yet have a full relationship with God, or might not um, even know the how to do that. And you and your family are just a shining example of that. That's one thing that when I was coming back to my relationship with Christ, and my husband was just learning about it, 10, 9, 8 years ago. Yeah, when I met you. We You guys just took us in, and there was no judgment. There was no like, well, you have to do it this way. There was no condemning, which I think happens a lot. And no, you're not Christian enough to be my friend. And so, how do you do that? How do you do? Um, no matter who you are, you're Christian enough for me, and I'm gonna love you no matter where you are on the walk. As a Christian, I think that that's one thing that I've looked to you and your husband Jeremy Johnson to. Um, you just shine, you just radiate that, and I think that really welcomes people of all backgrounds to experience Christ's love through you.
Um, well, you were my chance in doing that. I mean, I've told you this. You were. And I didn't know that. I mean, for me, I look back and I feel like that was a really very long dry season, and probably the most difficult 4 years ever. But, God brought you and Jake to us as well. And I think I just really remember me wanting to, I have the desire to interject cheesy Christian lines every now and then. I mean, I'm not saying that like I was 100% there at that point. I was definitely still learning, and I was.
I think you're further along in your walk, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
cheesy Christian lines are okay. Like you come across them like they're cheesy Christian lines. They're not like, if you don't agree with me, you're going to die.
right,
Judgment.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's probably because I was never a part of anything like that, and I was never taught to be like that, and God is all about love first and foremost, and His love looks so different than what we think love is like on the earth. And I think the more He teaches about His love, the more we can love, and the more ways we can show just absolute crazy love to people that we could never think of on our own. But at that time, I was at a very different place, but God was He just really told me to just listen and just to be around and not try to interject anything and not try to, he really just told me to listen and to sit back and watch. And I just remember time after time of being with you guys. And, I would kind of have this thinking and this hope in my mind, and I wouldn't say anything, and God would just work it out. And I would just hear you say something, and I would be like, really? I was just thinking and hoping would happen, and God just did it without me at all. And I think that was my first lesson in how much God can do sometimes when we pull back and give Him room to breathe, because sometimes we want to get our hands so involved, and we feel like people just aren't going to get it unless we really get in there and really tell them exactly what to think and exactly what to say and exactly what to do. But on the other hand, when you don't back out far enough, you don't give Him enough room, and there's not enough room for the Holy Spirit to come in and just work. So it's definitely a fine line, and I didn't know what was going on then. I just knew that I wasn't really meant. I just, we just had coffee, and I didn't know what was going on, but God was working. So
Yeah. And so that's really it. Like, if you really want something for somebody and want to have a deeper relationship, one is we have to listen to God, and two, we have to step back and allow other people that freedom and God to work in their lives, and totally have that faith that God's going to work in their life. And maybe even pray for them by setting that intention, but love them nonetheless.
That is exactly, I mean, you put it into words. That's exactly how God told me to react and treat my husband. Because, as you have a marriage and a spiritual marriage and a Christian marriage, there's all these kind of strings attached to that. And he really did just ask me to extend him the same freedom that I had been extended by God to grow and move in my own timing. And, as God didn't push me along before I was ready, he asked me to not do that to my husband, and he asked me to love him wherever he was at. And that is just a hard thing to do, but that was what was done to me. That was the timeline that God gave me. And hey, how can I not, allow somebody else the same freedom? So, yeah, you summed that up perfectly.
Awesome. Emma, thank you so much for sharing your love for God and for sharing your walk in faith and the growing of your faith and how we can expand and listen more on HUGS. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So everybody, this hug is for you. This growth is for you. And it's from God and through us. And how we share it is we just pass it around the world through your shares, through your comments, through your likes. So tweet us, Facebook us, and say hi. And you can always get the Embrace You program at fithappychristians.com and learn more about how you can just let God untie things from physical pain to heartache and traumas in your life and really live fully present in your body and completely connected to Christ in your mind right there at fithappychristians.com. And until next week, have a fantastic time. God made you and you are beautiful.